All right, let's cast on for the sleeves. I'm using size 11 double pointed needles, and you can certainly use circular needles if you'd like. I want the two sleeves to be harmonizing but not identical. So I'm using this aqua woolly instead of the pale blue wool that I used on the first sleeve, but still the mint for the bottom of the cast on. And I'm going to cast on 24 stitches, making sure the mint is on my thumb so that that color will end up on the bottom of the cast on. So we're going to do 8 stitches on each of 3 needles and then join in the round. So there's 8. This original slip stitch we can just remove. All right, now to keep on going with the double long tail cast on, I just hold the second needle underneath like an X and keep on casting on. I think that's 8. And now if you don't want to do that trick where you hold the needle, the next needle under like this, sometimes I like to cheat and I'll do, let's say, 4 extra on this one. And then slip them onto the next needle. Then you can do the same thing. So 5, 6, 7, 8. Sounds like we should do a dance now. And then 4 extra. And then you can add those. Wait, but maybe I did too many. 8, 16. Okay, so that's not necessary. I was getting excited. So now it's time to join in the round. And we can trim this mint colored yarn so it's not in our way. Thank you for your service. We'll set that aside. Maybe we can sew some seams later or use it in another project. Now, to join in the round, you can either do it now, or what I like to do is work 1 row just to give ourselves a little bit of height before we join in the round. And I think it makes it easier and prevents us from accidentally twisting when we join in the round. So this is the quote wrong side or inside of the sleeve. So I'm starting with a purl, but it really doesn't matter with a 1x1 rib. You can start with a knit or a purl, but I'm going to purl, then knit, and then when transitioning from one double pointed needle to the next, I like to pull snugly, not tight, don't have to pull it too tight, but just give it a little snug tug so that you don't get a loose space or a ladder in between your double pointed needles. So this is the point where I'm wrapping it around that I give it a little tug. All right. By the way, when you do 1 by 1 rib, you want to have an even number of stitches so that you can just keep going around and around and you don't have to worry about repeating a purl or a knit. All right. So now when I put this triangle together, I have the knit from this last needle, I have the purl from this first needle, okay. We're going to transfer the stitch from the last needle to the first needle. All right, and what I like to do, there are a couple ways you could do it. Today, why don't we drag the first stitch over the last stitch and put it back on the needle. Okay. So now technically we're connected, and now we're going to knit that first stitch, purl the second stitch, and then you can go ahead and rib all the way around continuously, I believe for 8 rounds, but we'll count in a minute. Now, if you like to start a double-pointed needle with a knit, as I do, you can adjust here. We're 1 off now that we've made that adjustment at the beginning of the row, or the round, I should say. So I'm going to slide that over here. So now we've got starting with a knit. So not to be a broken record, but 24 stitches is just what fits me. Please, please, please do a gauge swatch using whatever needles you're going to use for your cuffs, and make sure that this will fit you as well. Okay, so now I'm going to do 8 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on this needle, transfer the 9th stitch to the 2nd needle, and now all is harmonious and symmetrical. Okay, I'm going to take a minute here, count how many rounds we need and how many we have. So you're going to ignore this first braid, the one that's connected to the mint cast on, because that is the cast on round. We've done 3 rounds so far. 1, 2, 3. You count the one that's on the needle. 1, 2, 3. And all together, we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's what I had thought, because this one is connected to the mint. Maybe we want 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, it's probably not going to be that many, and I'll tell you why. Because this yarn is fluffier. So I'm going to do 8 rounds and then measure. And so if it looks similar, you know, comparable in size, we're going to call it a day. So here we go with 5 more rounds. quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm working on the 6th. Here's the home stretch of the 7th round, and I'm using the cast on ends to show me where the beginning of the round is. As you get further and further up the sleeve, you're not going to be able to see where the cast on ends are. You can use a stitch marker to note the beginning of your round. All right, so I think this is the last one. Yep, one more. Alrighty. Now let's measure against the first cuff just to see if we're roughly equivalent. And we are. Yep, I'd say that's perfect. Now you can see that the gauge is much looser here. If I were feeling perfectionist, I would maybe even go down to a smaller size needle with this yarn. But life is short and we're going to move on. All right, it's time to trim this aqua color yarn. Boop. And we're going to transition now both to larger needles and to thicker yarn. This is Loopy Mango Merino number 5 in color lavender. And every time I start a new ball of yarn, I always set the label aside so that I can note in Ravelry that I've used this ball. I take it away from my inventory and I add it to my projects. All right. Now, you can tie these two ends loosely together if you want to. I think I'll do that. And then I will unknot this loose knot at the end when I'm weaving in ends. Just like that. And we can even give it a little haircut. Okay. Now the yarn goes behind the needle, and I'm using the new larger needle and just knitting right into the old needles. I'm not going to increase any stitches here. The difference in gauge is so pronounced that I don't need to increase. However, depending on your yarn and your needle difference in size, you might want to increase stitches here. I'm done with this needle. If you want a puffy sleeve look. So my sleeves are going to look puffy. Ooh, this happens sometimes. catch that baby. You catch it by going front to back and scoop it back on there. There we go. And I forget what I was saying, but if I left something out, please let me know in the comments. Okay, now it can get a little tight here, so I'm going to pull the circular needle through to the wire and then turn back and keep knitting. Okay. Now at first, the stitches are going to stretch and you'll have like a little cord hanging out sometimes. You can just pull that and keep on knitting. But as you get further up the sleeve, the knitting will expand. You'll have a little room and you'll just be knitting around and around and you won't have this extra cord here. That's if you're using a short enough needle. So this is a 24-inch needle, size 19, 24 inches long. And that's just the right size. Now, if I were using a 32-inch or a 40-inch needle, I would have this kind of loop happening the whole time. And that's fine. It's just you give it a little extra pull every once in a while. Ooh, I really like the way these colors are. Oh, they're so pretty. I haven't decided what to do about this fawn, this tan color, because technically I think I'm out of it. I'll have to double check and see if I have any more. There is a scarf that I've made that I could pull out and use the yarn, but I kind of hate to do that. I just made the scarf. So I may go, as I have with this aqua yarn, I may go with an alternative and stash bust a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to continue and make a total of 5 rounds of this rose color. I might decide to do more, but then the total number of rounds will be the same so that our sleeves are the same length.